Hello, everybody. This is Morgan Ortagus back on the Morgan Ortagus Show. I am incredibly excited to have an amazing guest with me, the newest senator from the state of Alabama, Senator Katie Britt. Hi, Katie. How are you?
I'm doing great, Morgan, and I'd love to start by just saying congratulations. We are so excited for you and your new show, and excited for America to get to hear from you even more frequently.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for coming on the show. One of the things that I think is just so great about you being in the Senate is that you represent a new generation of leadership in the Senate. You probably could be the age, you could be the daughter probably for many people in the Senate. But I just think it's so amazing. I just want to say I've heard this from so many women that it's inspiring to have you in the Senate. It's inspiring to see a new generation of leadership step up. And I think what's particularly great about your new role is that you have not been afraid to get involved in really important national security discussions. So as our audience is getting to know the Morgan Ortagus Show and getting to know you, Senator Katie Britt, can you sort of tell us what your priorities are as a newer member of the Senate?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, coming to the Senate, representing the great state of Alabama, representing the values that we hold dear, knowing that the most important things in life are faith, family, and freedom, and finding ways to fight to ensure that no child zip code actually determines their opportunity, and that everyone has the ability to achieve the American dream. When you look at that on a broader scale, knowing that we have to drill down not only on things that are happening here on our soil, but looking across the globe and making sure that we are actually achieving peace through strength. And in doing that, Morgan, I have been really fortunate to have some more distinguished members who have been here, who are steeped in foreign policy and international affairs, and how we will actually be able to achieve that long term, allow me to learn alongside them as they lead. And so on that, I've had the opportunity to travel to a number of different places across the globe, representing our country and really working on forming and cementing relationships. And most recently, Morgan, obviously traveling with Senator Lindsey Graham, who led a bipartisan codel over to Israel after October 7th, and seeing all of that firsthand was startling, to say the least, but was so important as we continue to look to find ways for America to lead.
One of the things that really struck me, and I think so many Americans, is it was a press conference. I think you might have been in the Middle East, or maybe you were back in D.C., but there was a press conference when you were talking about what you saw and what you observed when you were in Israel. And one of the things that you said that really struck with me, and you were calling out Hamas for the fact that they use women and children as human shields. And you said to them, "Fight like a man." And I thought that moment was just so powerful, and also just really encapsulated the problem when we talk about these civilian deaths, which we all hate, but the Palestinian civilian deaths, when we talk about them, we forget that these Hamas terrorist fighters are cowards, and they are cowards who will put children and women in front of them in order for themselves not to die. Can you just explain to us what was going through your head in that moment, and what you observed in Israel that led to that moment?
Yes, absolutely. So, Morgan, I mean, much of how I obviously approach day to day here in the United States Senate is approaching it, as a mom of two school-age kids. Every time I sit at the table, think about what parents are dealing with, and the struggles that we're having, and things we want to see fixed and secured for our children and their futures. And so when I went to Israel and we sat there with the hostages, the families of hostages, Morgan, I sat there as a wife and as a mother and as a daughter and as a sister, hearing each and every one of their stories through that lens. And when we then met with Netanyahu and others there in the Israeli government, and they showed us the video footage that the cowards, the Hamas terrorist captured in their GoPro cameras. And I hope people in America don't lose sight of that. Not only did they commit these atrocities, they recorded them. They recorded them to memorialize them, to encourage others, to humiliate, to destroy, and to praise. And it is disgusting and despicable. And the things that I saw on those videos were things that I had hoped a human being was not capable of. And when you look at what they did to innocent children, to women, to families, I mean, it is beyond comprehension. Watching them kill children in front of their parents, watching them burn parents alive in front of their children, watching them rape women, Morgan, over and over again, watching them celebrate after murdering families and then finishing their breakfast at the breakfast table. It is despicable. It is disgusting. These are not soldiers. These are not combatants. These are innocent civilians. And it has to be called out for what it is. And it is evil, absolute evil.
I keep wondering, I had a press conference earlier this week at Hudson Institute with your colleagues, Marsha Blackburn and Joni Ernst, and some awesome ladies in the House. And we were talking about just what you were talking about how Hamas uses rape as a weapon of war. And we're over 2 months into this war where we lost over 30 Americans, where we still have at least eight Americans left behind. And Senator Britt, I keep thinking, when am I going to be able to talk about this without tearing up, without crying? And every time I hear it, it's fresh and it's new. It feels like it's fresh and new for the first time, but I think it's important because every time someone calls for a ceasefire, they should remember, we should play back. Every time someone calls for a ceasefire, we should play back what Senator Katie Britt just said and talked about killing children and torturing children in front of their parents and vice versa, killing parents in front of their children. What kind of despicable monsters do that? And so every time somebody calls for the ceasefire, I just want to take that video or that audio of what you just said and replay it every time.
And Morgan, can I even add to that? I mean, when people call for a ceasefire, I say we had a ceasefire. It was October 6th, and Hamas changed that. But I want people to realize those acts that we just talked about, where they committed on innocent children, women, elderly, Hamas has said unequivocally, they will come back again and again and again and again and recreate October 7th until the Jewish people are eradicated. And I want everybody across our country to think, if they knew that just right next door, so less than a mile in some circumstances, down the road, there was someone who said, we will come into your home. We will get you out of the bed. We will murder your children. We will cut their fingers off while they're eating breakfast. Would you, in fact, stop? No, you would hunt them down because you would never be able to tuck your child in at night and lock your door and believe them to be safe. And we should not ask anything less of the Israeli people.
That's right. And I got to tell you, your voice is so important on this, especially to Jewish Americans. All Americans woke up October 7th and in the days after and learned about one of the worst terrorist attacks also committed against the American people. As I said, we think the number's 32, 33 Americans at least killed. There could be more. 8 Americans that are still being held hostage by a terrorist group. But I think particularly for Jewish Americans in the weeks after this, to see, for example, we had to prove that women were raped, right? We didn't have UN women, took them almost 2 months to make a statement, took the UN Secretary General almost 2 months. And so we believe all women, unless they are Jewish. We are seeing Jewish students in this country, in America, afraid to wear yarmulke, afraid to wear any outwardly Jewish symbols in America. And I don't know if there has been a time for Jewish Americans in modern history where we have felt more unsafe than in this moment. So your voice, Senator Katie Britt, matters so much. I want you to know, to Jewish Americans, to know that we have people in our government like you, like my friend Elise Stefanik, who are standing up for us.
Gosh, thank you. And listen, it is a true honor to stand by your side. And I believe as a nation, we have seen things that have shown us that we are kind of fraying on the edges, but this, not just being able to call evil evil, not being able to stand up and stand firmly against anti-Semitism across our nation. That is a fundamental crack in who we are as a country. And we must all diligently work to repair that crack, because what we are seeing from the lack of people speaking up about the sexual violence and the rape used as a weapon of war by this terrorist group is despicable. What we're seeing, I mean, obviously, Elise Stefanik did just a remarkable job with those presidents in front of her, and I think she exposed the real truth. If you were to take any other minority group and put them in place of what she said about Jewish individuals, they would have immediately answered differently. And I think it shows that we have to stand firmly with the Jewish people, whether they are abroad or here at home, and stand up firmly against anti-Semitism.
It is. I was just texting with a Israeli-American man named Dory. We were on Hannity together in the early days, just a few days after October 7th, because his nieces were taken captive. And that was the first time that I cried, I think, because I was actually I was in the Middle East. I was headed to Israel. I think I know I was meeting Senator Ernst there. I think that you were going to be on that trip as well. And I had just went into sort of war zone mode, right? And I started working, and I've worked in several war zones. So I just went in that mode and did not allow myself to feel until I was on Hannity with Dory, and he started talking about his nieces, who were my daughter's age, and just the comparison. And I think this is why it's so important to have Katie Britt in the Senate representing Alabama, because you do have small children at home, and you have the perspective when we look at all of these international crises. You, Senator Britt, had the perspective of a mom with young children, with school-age children, and that's just not a perspective that we have in the Senate. And I think it's so important. I actually want to transition, because I think your voice is so important, as you said, as a mother, as a young woman. You actually had a moment that also stuck out to me on a similar and different issue, but similar context. You were at the border, at our southern border, and there was a very, if our listeners did not see it, you have to go back and watch this press conference. But you were at the southern border, and you came back and gave a press conference where you spoke about the women, what they face at the border, Hispanic women. They are facing rape also, human trafficking, sexual exploitation.
We walked through and we got to hear women tell us their story. And their stories are brutalizing. And to Senator Cruz's point, if you're not telling it, that's on you. Because when a woman sits there and she tells you not just about being raped, but how many times a day she's raped, when she tells you about having to lay in that bed while they come in and out and in and out, it's disgusting and it's despicable.
And you were so passionate about the border, and I think changed so many people's minds, again, because you weren't an older man sort of speaking and railing against the border, and, love the older men in the Senate. But it was just this beautiful moment when you had a young woman saying, listen, young women, young mothers, just like me coming across this border are experiencing, rape and human trafficking and everything else. Can you tell us about that moment and what you experienced at the border?
Absolutely, Morgan. So I went to the border 3 times my first 2 months in office. I am a big believer that in order to be able to really institute the kind of change we need, you can't just read about it or get someone to tell you. Seeing it yourself makes a big difference, and asking tough questions and telling them you want the real unvarnished truth is the only way we can get to the actual root cause and know what's happening. And as I sat across from young women and that said not just that they were raped, but how many times a day they were raped, talking to me about being held in a room while men would come into the room and leave the room, then another man would come in and then leave the room, and what they were required to do in order to be carried, quote, to our border. Then you talk to CBP agents who tell you, or, about pulling lifeless body of children and women, a woman pregnant with twins. And it just, and you see the pain in their eyes. And then I talked to a woman in Mexico who said to me, my daughter, went outside to play after school and she never came back. And you realize that the laws that we have currently encourage people to take children, to bring children, because it is an easier passage. And then those children are recycled over and over. FBI has looked at this, and children are being recycled over and over again. And this administration will not allow us to DNA test or fingerprint so that we are able to keep up with this. This is disgusting and it's despicable. And then even the men will tell you, Morgan, they'll say, this is how much I paid to get here. This is where I'm going. This is what my job's going to be. And this is how much more I owe. And you begin to realize that none of these people are actually getting to live an American dream. They're actually living an American nightmare, because that man has become an indentured servant. And then the drug cartels, who have their tentacles in every corner of our country, come back again and again and collect from them. And this, so the point being, obviously, you and I are able to see the national security threat that is occurring there. Under the previous administration, we had about 11 people on the terrorist watch list caught between the ports of entry. Now we are upwards of hundreds that have been caught in between the ports of entry. We know we have 1.7 million gotaways. We know we don't know who they are, where they're going, or what their intentions are. We know we have heightened threats. We've heard the FBI director say, I see red lights everywhere. Senator Lindsey Graham asked him that the other day in a hearing, and that's what came out. We know that it's a heightened threat level. But what the liberals are doing is they are looking past the humanitarian crisis that their failed policies are creating. And men, women, and children are paying the price. And the only people who are winning here are the drug cartels and the billions of dollars they're making off of using these people.
This is so important what Senator Katie Britt from the state of Alabama is telling us. Katie, you will never convince me that this policy is humane, that an open border policy is humane, because if you go down there, as you and I have done multiple times, and talk to the women that are down there, talk to the farmers down there, it broke my heart to talk to some farmers down there at the border in Texas and in Arizona. I've been to both. Their children can't play on their farmland anymore. It's too dangerous. And this is just, this is not a humane policy. There is nothing humane about the way that these women are raped multiple times and trafficked. So listen, I think this is just such an important message. I know, Senator Britt, that you're incredibly busy, so we don't want to keep you too much longer, but I just want to say thank you. I want you to know how much your perspective as a young mother with young children, how much your perspective matters in the Senate. I know many moms like me are just so grateful to have another mom with young children in the Senate representing what we feel. And it's important because, again, it makes a difference when you tell the story of what happened to the young women at the border, or whenever you tell the story of what happened when young women had to see their children tortured or killed in front of them in Israel. It brings, again, it just brings in, it sheds a whole new light on it than hearing it from someone else. So we are just so grateful to have you. I'm grateful to have you on the second episode of the Morgan Ortagus Show here on SiriusXM Patriot Channel 125. I hope, Senator Britt, Katie Britt from Alabama, that you will come back soon and talk about more national security issues with us.
Absolutely. And thank you for your leadership and continuing to shine a light on these important issues, Morgan. The country is better as a result of what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks, everybody. This is Senator Katie Britt from Alabama. I'm Morgan Ortagus from the Morgan Ortagus Show. We'll be right back.